Hey everyone. I've realised lately that all of my tutorials have been heavily based on GameMaker language, but not everyone knows how to use GameMaker language. So this is the first tutorial where I'm going to attempt to show you how to use GameMaker language. So I've been going through all the things like variables, if statements, just mainly the basic stuff, just to get people on their way to understanding more. And oftentimes, when using GameMaker, it's like a requirement to know GameMaker language. Like there are drag and drop functions, but you can do a lot more when you know the programming language. Okay, so this will most likely turn into a full series. It all depends on you guys. So if this tutorial helps you and if you want more, just hit the like button, and if I get a decent amount of likes on this video, then I'll be sure to keep the series going and show you more. Okay, so today I'm going to be covering basic functions. We're going to be covering functions like how to draw text to the screen, and then I'll also be taking you through variables. And that'll probably be it for this tutorial. Okay, so getting started, you're going to want to make a new project, which I've already done. I just called mine GML tut for tutorial. I'll be using the same project through all these tutorials, so yeah, I advise you to do the same, just like kind of follow along. Yeah, another thing is I'm using GameMaker Studio. A lot of this stuff will work in older versions, probably down to GameMaker 8, I think. But anything that doesn't work, I'm sorry, but yeah, Studio's a new thing. Okay, so start off with, once you've got your new project, you're gonna want to make a new object. Okay, these tutorials are gonna require you to know the basics, so you know what an object is, how to put it in a room, that kind of stuff. I'm not going to be taking you through that stuff in this tutorial. This is specifically for GameMaker language. Okay, so yeah, make a new object, and I'm just going to call it object draw or obj draw, and go add event and add in a draw event. Okay, then you're going to want to go to the control tab of from the drag and drop things here, and drag in a code snippet. Okay, so once you have that up, we're ready to code. So anything we put in this will be applied to the draw event of this object. So what we're going to do is draw a bit of text to the screen. So the way we do a lot of stuff in GameMaker is through things called functions. Now functions allow us to tell GameMaker to do things, for example draw to the screen, or allow us to check to see if different things are happening. So you might want to check the distance between two positions, all that kind of stuff is done through what we call functions. Now the basic syntax for functions is the name of the function and then two brackets on the end, and in between those brackets are any arguments that we might need for the function. Now arguments are kind of like bits of information that we have to supply the function for it to work properly. So I'll show you this now. So to draw text to the screen, you're going to want to write draw underscore text. Now when in the name of a function or the name of a variable or the name of an object, never use spaces if you plan on using code. It will more than often give you an error. If you can see there that the text has turned orange because GameMaker knows that that's a function. If I take away that and just put in a space, you can see it doesn't understand. So it has to be an underscore, not a space. Okay, so that's the name of the function. We then need the two brackets. And then if you want to be like a C++ programmer or some of those other programmers, you add in your little column thingy there. I don't remember what it's called, honestly, but yeah, I just normally reference it as like an end line kind of thing. Yeah, okay. So once you've got it written out like that, you've got draw text and your brackets, and then the end line thing, which you don't necessarily need, but I added in there anyways. Go in between your brackets, and you'll see down the bottom here, you've got X, Y, and string in between those brackets. Now we need to supply those arguments for this function to work. So if we run that now, we'll get an error, because it does have the right number of arguments, so it doesn't know what to do. Okay, so X and Y is our positional arguments. So we've got the X axis and the Y axis, so X being horizontal, Y being up and down. If you ever need to know like what number to put in there, you can get out of your object. And we'll make a new room now, so just hit create a new room. We're going to maximize that, and if you move your mouse along here, you can see down the bottom that the X and Y position changes. So if you ever wanted to know where, say, like the top left was, you just kind of move your mouse around and it'll come up with that for you. So you just grab it from there, then back in your object, we can enter that in. So we're going to draw our text at 32, 32. So X is 32, then Y is going to be 32 as well. In between arguments, to separate them, you use commas. So we're going to write 32 for X, then comma to take us to the next argument, then write 32 for Y, then comma again because we need to enter our string argument. Now in GameMaker, string is text. So there's two ways of doing this. If you had, for example, a number that you wanted to enter in, you can either write string. Actually, no, don't worry about that. Cancel that all out. Sorry. Okay. When writing strings, you have to have them in quotation marks. If I was to just write hello like that, GameMaker's like it says that there's nothing wrong with that, and technically there isn't. But GameMaker references that as a variable because that's kind of how you write variables. You just kind of write the name of them, and then GameMaker knows what it is. But because we haven't initialized that variable, it's going to get confused and give us an error. So I'll show you that now. I'll just tick that off and just add in your object to your room. Doesn't really matter where, just dump it anywhere and hit run. And as you can see here, execution error variable get hello. So just here, it doesn't know what that is. So to stop that from happening, and to tell GameMaker it's a string, we put it in between quotation marks. This can either be single or double. I normally use double. Okay, so yeah, we just put it in between quotation marks, and then that will draw our text. That is it for drawing text on the screen, pretty much. So by default, that's just going to draw it at the default font and the default color, which is black. So if you tick that off and hit OK on that object and then run it now. There you go, we have hello being drawn at 32x and 32y. And yeah, we just have the word hello being drawn there. And that's pretty much the basics of a function. Obviously, they go a lot more advanced depending on the function you use, but that's basic concept. So you've got your function name, two brackets. In between those brackets, you enter any arguments separated by a comma. And as I said before, arguments are listed down the bottom of the code editor. So if you go in between the brackets of any function, then it'll tell you what arguments you need. Some functions don't need any arguments at all, but most do. Okay, so we have that text being drawn on the screen. Now I'm going to take you through variables. Okay, so in your create event, drag in another code snippet, and we're ready. Okay, so what a variable is pretty much a name for like holding data. So anything from like the letter N to like a longer word like alphabet, like Doesn't matter what it's called, but it'll hold whatever data you tell it to. So in the create event, to initialize variable, all you have to do is write something like n equals 8. And what that does is it sets n to 8. So whenever you wanted to use the number 8, instead of writing 8, you could write n, and it'd mean the same thing. For example, we could write 2 plus n, and then that'd equal 10. So I'll show you that now. So we've got n equals 8, and then we'll make another one called t, and we'll set that to 2. And then we'll make another one called a for answer, and we'll go a equals t plus n. And that way a should equal 10. So to bring up a message on the screen, you can write show message. This is a function, so we need the brackets. And then where it says str, that stands for string. So then instead of putting quotation marks, just put in the letter A, because we now have that as variable here. Then run that. And we have 10. So that'll work with the other variables as well. So if you wanted to bring up the number 8, you could put n in there and run that. And there you have 8. Okay, so hopefully you get that. I do my best to explain things, but it's not always perfect. So yeah, basically it just holds numbers. So variable names, they can't start with numbers. Never start with numbers. They can have numbers in them, so you might have N9TTT or something like that. That's fine, but it can never start with a number like that. Can't do it. Not allowed. Okay, so yeah, variable can be any length, like the name. So you might have something like that. That would be fine as long as you could remember it. But I feel like a name like that would be kind of hard to remember. So normally name it something that you're going to know what it is. So let's go ahead and use text in variables. So that numbers are fine. We've got numbers down pat, so we've got 8 and 2. That's it for using numbers for variables. But let's do something better than that. So let's write name for a variable name, and then equals. Then remember, when using strings, they have to be in quotation marks. And then in there, I'm going to write my name. Okay. So we've got name, and then we'll go last name. Never use spaces in variables, same with functions. If you're going to use a space, instead use an underscore, like that. And then we'll put in something like, I don't know, Jack will do. It's a bit of a weird last name, but whatever. And make sure you put the equals in between there, just like that. Okay, so then with this show message again, we can put in full name equals name plus Jack. Now because those are both the same data type, so we've both got text in both those variables, that will work fine. However, if they were different, it wouldn't work out, and I'll show you that in a sec. So just in the show message, write full name instead of the A that we had in there, and then just run it. And I screwed up a bit there. It's not name plus Jack, it's name plus full name. That's my bad. There we go. And I've done something wrong again. And that was pretty stupid. Not name plus Jack, not name plus full name, name plus last name. I can't believe I screwed that up so many times. That's just bad. Okay, there we go. Okay, so as you can see, it adds our strings together and writes Nathan Jack. Now there's no space in between there, and if you were actually writing a full name, you'd probably want a space between them. So to get that little space, all we have to do is go to the end of the first name or to the start of the last name and just put in a space, and that will add in the space in between the names. As you can see, Nathan, Jack, and you've got the space in there as well. Okay, so that's fine. That's using the same data type. But what if we wanted to have, say, Nathan and then a number, and draw both of those in the same text box? Then we can write num for a new variable and just set that something like 5. So now we've got Nathan and 5, and change that to num, and that will not work because the data types are different. So to fix that up, name's already a string, and we now want to turn num into a string, where at the moment it's a number. So we write string. This is a function, by the way, so we've got the bracket there. Num is our argument, and like that. So that there will convert num from number data type to string. So just by putting it in between those brackets of the string function, that will turn it into a string, and that will now work. So if you run that, then you've got Nathan 5. Okay, so variables, those are what we call local variables. So they can be used inside this object, like anywhere inside this object. However, what if you wanted a variable that could be used outside of this object, so by other objects as well, and they could all use it freely? For that you need what is called a global variable. So what we can do to make a global variable is just write the word global dot and then our variable name. So we've got name then equals Nathan. There you go, that is how to make a global variable. Now if you wanted to access that from a different object, you need to make sure that this object is in the room first, because this object holds the code that creates the variable. Before the variable can be used, it needs to be created. So this object has to be first. Okay, so then to use that variable, you can't just write name. So you can't just write show message and then name. I guarantee you that will not work. You have to write global dot name, and then that will work. So let's make another object and just test that out. So take away the show message, if you put that in, and then just take away the object and make a new one called obj, and I'll just call it var. Okay, then in this create event we're going to write show message then global dot name, just like that. Okay, and then just tick that away and put that in your room somewhere as well, and then run it. And I'm pretty sure that is a depth problem there. Yeah, it would be. Okay, so when using objects, you can't guarantee the order of creation. So as you can see, we've got global.name equals Nathan, but even when we ran that and we had it in separate objects, this still didn't know what it was because the variable hadn't been initialized yet, and this object, from what I could see, was created first. So to change that, we have what we call depth. So in each object, you've got this little box here with depth there. So the higher the depth, the further in it is. I guess you can think of it like Photoshop layer. If you've ever used Photoshop, you'll know that you can have different layers, and you can drag them, like you can drag one above the other one to have that one kind of sit on top of the other one. It's the same kind of thing, but instead of using layers, they're just using separate numbers. So the higher the number, the lower it is, and the lower the number, the higher it is. So we want this to be low, because the low things get created before the high things. So for object draw, set that to something like 99, and then that should fix our problem. There you go. So global.name equals Nathan, and it shows up from the other object. Okay, so we can delete that other object now. We don't need that anymore. Actually, no, keep that. Show you one other way of accessing variables. Okay, so that's fine. We've got a global variable there. But what if you wanted to access an object's local variable? Then for that, we first need to have a local variable. So go back into your draw object and change that back to just name. Okay. Then in your object variable object, change that back to name as well. And that won't work because it's a local variable and it's going to be looking inside this object for that variable. So you're going to get an error because it won't be able to find it. We need to access that from the other object. So to do that, we write obj draw dot name. So that is going to go through object draw and find that variable inside of object draw. And then that will work. Okay, for whatever reason it didn't show the message then. I don't know why. Anyway, I don't know what the problem was there, but it didn't show up with the message, but that's how it's done. So you just write the variable name and then dot name, and then that will give you the variable from the other object. Okay, now we can get rid of the var object. Okay, so that's how to initialize a variable through the create event, but what if you want to make a new variable for like a different event? So we'll leave that there and we'll go into our draw event. And then just space down your draw text function a bit. Okay, so in here, you'd think to make a new variable from the draw event, I just write like j equals 9. That'll work, won't it? No, it won't work. You can't do that. To make a new variable through another event, you need to write var j equals 9. Now this won't work for GameMaker 8 users. I don't know about GameMaker 8.1, but GameMaker 8 doesn't let you write var j equals 9. In GameMaker 8, you would have to write var j, and then below that go j equals 9. And then that would work for GameMaker 8 users. It works for GameMaker Studio as well, but it now has the ability to just write j equals 9 straight up there. Okay, and that will give us a variable, but this will only be there for this function and will be reset each time it runs. So with the draw and step events, those functions are run each step. Now at the moment there are 30 steps each second. You can change that in the room settings. But yeah, these are run through every step. And once this function ends, so once it gets to say here, and that variable will be like deleted from memory and recreated once the function is run again. So you can't use that variable in say the step event, whereas if you use the variables that we made in the create event, you'd be able to use that in any other event inside this object. This one only applies to this event. Okay, so actually we'll just test it out. So we'll write var t equals, and then just in quotation marks we're going to make a string, and we'll put in the word text. Then instead of having this hello in the draw text event, we'll just put in t, take that off and run it. And there you go, we have the word text instead of name. Now hopefully you understood that. It was pretty brief. I think I'm running out of time now. So yeah, any questions, just write them in the comment box below. I'll answer as many of them as I can. And any questions that are good, like anything that I've like definitely missed and should have been in there, I'll add like a question and answer thing into the description as any relevant questions pop up. Okay, so yeah, hopefully you understood that. If you want more like in this series, just like this video and I'll do more, like assuming that I get a decent amount of likes. If not, I won't bother. Yeah, hopefully this helped you out. Like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, and I'll see you hopefully in the next episode.